there's no doubt that there's a consciousness awakening underway.
We're constantly stuck in the intellect, in this world of activity, in this world of the five senses, where we're bringing in information and saying, this is what's true, this is what's not true, this is what I like, what I don't like, my preferences, my desires, all that. We're limiting our perception of reality to a very specific realm. We're seeing young people move through the world in a way that's really connected to themselves, connected to this sort of deeper source of knowing that's beyond the intellect. And when you do that, you're moving through the world not only a lot more joyfully and with more confidence and more creativity, but with more service, because I think that's also our nature. When you feel like you're connected to everything and everyone, you very quickly start taking responsibility for everything and everyone that's around you, but not as a burden, as your very nature.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. Last episode, I was talking about the brilliance of season 2 of the Telepathy Tapes, which really is almost like a mirror reflection of Where's My Mind by Mark Gober, which came out in 2018. That podcast is based on his first book on how our brains receive consciousness. If you haven't watched episode 2, of this podcast, make sure you do. And the Telepathy Tapes season 2 really discusses non-local consciousness and all the different evidence of it being received. And so definitely check that out. And the reason I mention it again is not only because I love it, but today's episode is really a deep dive on the same subject that Mark Gober discusses, as well as the Telepathy Tapes. And I am very excited to share our guest with you today. Welcome.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here, Michael. Really, really love you, brother. And we had such a good time in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Thanks to Arjun Gupta. Maybe we should start there. Like, that was an incredible trip. I mean, when human beings get together and have nothing but presence, no electronics, really depending on each other, making our camps each night, and just going down that 277 miles of the Grand Canyon together. It created a bond, which was really, really special. And you and I really got to know each other there. And I'm so happy that we were brought together.
Me too. That was such a gift. I mean, sleeping under the stars, I know you feel so humbled, but also so connected to everything simultaneously. It's just like holding that contradiction, and you just can't avoid it every day. So beautiful.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. And you were such a mensch there, because the whole time you were videographing the whole thing, and you put together that beautiful video that you sent to us all. And it moved me to tears. It brought back all the memories of the Grand Canyon and just the group that we were a part of.
Yeah, it was just special to be able to share that with everyone. I love that. I love, being able to kind of sit and try to find a way to create a little poem from a moment in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm attracted to filmmaking in general.
Yeah. What was one of your favorite moments in the Grand Canyon? What was the standout moment? There were so many.
I'll tell you, every day, as crazy as it is, just looking for somewhere to camp and setting up and just laying there, because it was like I felt like a little kid again, like on an adventure. Like, where am I going to sleep? Where's a good place? And, when you're little, kind of going through your grandmother's attic, opening up, old boxes and things like that. It always felt like that. I always felt like there was this element of play and discovery, because every camp that we stayed at felt like it was just magical.
It was so magical. Yeah.
So I can't really say, I just absolutely loved every minute of it.
Yeah. You led our meditations out there too. And you really have an incredible developed skill set in that area. And one of them I had was really just absolutely transcendent. Any memories for you on that front, on the meditation side?
Yeah, I'll say that just that place alone has such a powerful kind of sacred energy. So I didn't have to do very much. It was like, but I also used my intuition. Like, there were certain moments where we would walk somewhere and I was like, oh, I think we need to do a meditation here. And I would think that, and then Arjun would turn to me and he's like, I think we need to do a meditation here. I was like, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
And I think that was the place where you had that particularly deep experience.
Yeah.
So you would kind of hear it. I think, like you said in the beginning, when you're disconnected from everything and you're so close to nature, there's an inner knowing that we always have,
Yeah.
that you're able to hear even more.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made it very easy to navigate that stuff, to, you know, and to get quieter and to guide everyone. And you can't design a more perfect place to lead
Yeah.
meditations than at the, you know, the bottom of the Grand Canyon with
Yeah.
a small group of people.
Yeah. One of the books I've mentioned on this podcast several times now is The Celestine Prophecy, which is phenomenal. And the most mind-blowing moment for me in the Grand Canyon was I was sitting next to Becca at the campfire. And we had one of our campers in the middle. I'll keep him nameless for now because I haven't asked him for permission to share the story, but I did ask Becca. And Becca was talking about signs that she receives from her dad. And I love the book Signs by Laura Lynn Jackson. She's actually in season 2 of the Telepathy Tapes, and she was in Mark Gober's podcast, Where's My Mind? But she was giving all these inexplicable stories about how her dad sends her signs via pennies. And they were just like way beyond random chance. I mean, it was just totally inexplicable. And the guy in the middle, who I really love, and we really became good friends on the trip, he's getting very curious. And then she says, well, so what are the signs that your parents send you, Brent? And I said, you know, it's things like goats and deer, sometimes birds. And I can always feel like when it's them and their presence. And at that moment, a goat appeared at the sunset, and everybody looked up, and it was just the most beautiful, majestic sunset with this goat standing up there on the cliff, totally stoic, you know, undisturbed by us looking at it. And it lasted for quite a while. It was like, you know, a good minute or two. And I said to him, yeah, it's kind of like that. And he's like, yeah, that's very interesting. And you could tell he was getting more curious. And he said, okay, this is going to sound really weird, guys, but I found a coin when I was setting up camp. And this was the first time this ever happened, the entire time we were in the Grand Canyon. It's actually pretty pristine. Like, they really limit how many people can come there. And it's such a treasure of the United States. And he pulls it out, and it's super weathered. And he's like, you know, this is really interesting. Maybe it's like a Navajo coin or something like that. And him and Becca go to the river, rinse it off, come back, and it's a freaking penny. And his mind is blown. And it all happened, you know, within the span of a couple of minutes. And that is exactly what the Celestine Prophecy is all about, that these synchronicities, these signs from the divine, these signs from the universe, however you want to look at it, you know, I think the divine is very playful, very loving. Sometimes it really hits you over the head where it's like, wake up, wake up, wake up.
Yeah, that wasn't very subtle.
That wasn't very subtle. No, that was a hitting us over the head. And it wasn't meant, in my opinion, it was cool that Becca's dad sent her a sign and my parents sent me a sign, but it was actually meant for him. Yeah. I think it was meant for his own spiritual journey to get him to realize, like, hey, this is real. And so it's just I'll never forget that memory.
You know, it's funny, I actually think about when we first arrived there was a big group of us and none of us knew each other. And we were in Vegas the night before.
Yeah.
We had all just arrived there, we're getting settled. We're like, oh my God, what did we sign up for? Who are these people?
Right.
And then we had to break up into groups to go to dinner, and we sort of self-selected because we couldn't all go as one. And for some reason, you were one of the first people that I was drawn to. I was just like,
likewise.
we kind of went, and you were like the only other vegetarian, I think, on the trip, and we went out to dinner together.
Yeah.
I think there are signs everywhere, and then there's always just little intuitions that if you can listen to are going to guide you towards your best self and your, you know, whatever's meant for you on that, on the journey.
you may remember that the younger Zach, not the Zach the captain,
Yeah.
came with us, and Zach and I became really good friends on the trip too. And there was a really beautiful meditation moment for Zach where I was there with him, and it was really cool. We both shared a lot of tears and a lot of hugs, and it was just an incredible, incredible moment. Yeah, I got this beautiful handwritten note from him, and reached out to him recently too, just to express gratitude. So we're here in the movie room. I always think it's so cool that this room was not designed by me. It was designed by the woman who built this home, and this is over 200-year wall from India. And this is apparently, according to Mark Gober, who was on episode 2, the Chinese deity Kuan Yin, which is the unification between male and female and the ascendancy of humanity. And the reason I describe it for the first time on this podcast is that last night we hosted dinner together, and we had amazing guests over here, some of my very close friends, and we saw a 13-minute segment of your upcoming documentary film on intuition. And it really blew people away, and really, I mean, I teared up again seeing it, even though you and I had looked at it the night before as we were selecting, what to show the group. Why don't we start there? Because the reason I wanted to have you on, we were talking about getting together to discuss intuition, in the Grand Canyon. Yeah. I knew that I was going to start a podcast at that time, and I think I asked you on the trip if you would be a guest on the show. So that segment really blew me away, and I can describe some of the moments, but let's just first set it up.
Sure. Well, for the past 3 years, my filmmaking partner Benjamin Hennertig and I have been on this journey where we're traveling all over the world, but we've really honed in mostly on the U.S., India, and Australia to cover this phenomenon of intuition, which is the lens through which we're looking at it, or we have the most access, is these students who are between ages of 5 and 17 through a program called the Intuition Process that the Art of Living Foundation is offering. I'm a longtime meditator, and that's where I learned how to meditate, and that's where I we do breathwork and meditation and all kinds of stuff. There's like probably 52 or something different programs under the Art of Living kind of umbrella. And one of them that has come up in the past years has been intuition. So I'll be off on these meditation retreats, and everyone's out doing their own thing during the day, and then at night they get together, and the kids would come and share what they learned that day. And they would take a few minutes and do what kind of looked like a magic show, and in a way it was a little bit like, skeptical. They would put on blindfolds and do things that required vision. Basically, that was the main thing that they would do. They would say what someone's wearing behind them. They could copy pictures that people were drawing. They could play tag with other kids on stage. They could do all these things. And I didn't really know what to think of it, to be honest. And then one time I was walking down the hallway, and a kid was about to go in and give one of these demonstrations, and he's like, I need to practice. Do you have something on you, a card? And at the time I was touring with my film Almost Sunrise, and I had a card with the movie poster, which was 2 veterans who kind of looked like Forrest Gump. They had big beards, and they were wearing backpacks hiking across the country. And then in their backpacks was a superimposed image of them at war. And so he takes it, and he's holding it, and he's like, it's travelers. No, it's soldiers. No, it's travelers. And he's like, oh, I don't know why I'm not getting it right. It's soldiers, it's travelers. And then he looked at it, and I was like, well, it's a photoshopped image of both. And he's like, oh, okay. And so I was like, what is going on here?
Right, how is this possible?
So I started talking to his mother, and what I realized was, this is a nice little demonstration that there's something more, that they have an ability to perceive things beyond the 5 senses. But what's really the benefit of that? What I discovered quite quickly is that these kids were living from the heart. They were living very creative, confident, playful lives where where they also had access to really deep wisdom, you know, and that's been my experience getting to know these kids over the years.
Yeah.
And I just felt like someone has to tell this story. There's something going on here that's really important, you know, and it was things that I knew as a meditator of 22 years, experiences that I've had personally that have shown me that consciousness is fundamental to reality. And this materialist sort of worldview, this paradigm that we've been locked into through our intellect for so long, is really working against us as a species, as individuals in so many different ways. And I thought telling this story could be an opportunity to have these discussions and really treated it as an investigation. So, and that's how Benjamin and I have really approached this, with curiosity, with skepticism, and honestly, just with a lot of joy and playfulness, because all of my other films, as you know, are pretty heavy, pretty serious things, and to make something that is exploring our potential, possibility, has just been such a gift. So it's, you know, we're looking at students, teachers, scientists, all who are in orbit of this phenomenon, you know, and of course our approach is with individuals, you know, it's going to be character driven and going on journeys with people, but it's covering a lot of ground. So we've been shooting now for 3 years, and we just started about a month ago organizing all the footage, all 100 and nearly 80 days of production that we've had so far, to start to think, okay, how are we going to turn this into the most compelling, exciting, accessible story that we can share with the world.
I'll tell you, there are so many mind-blowing moments for me just in the segment, but the one where I got goosebumps when I saw it was the one where the little girl was making an object move on a table with her mind. What is it like to be the person videoing that and seeing that? And like, you know, the skeptical mind, you know, you're looking up, are there any you know, strings or anything here? It really just shot up, you know, my arms when I saw that.
Sure. There have been so many moments like that. And it's funny because at a certain point you start to normalize it and take it for granted. And there are moments of skepticism for sure. And I think there has to be. We have to have some healthy skepticism. We have to like push on things and really make sure that it's going to stand that scrutiny, you know, of the rational mind, as it should. That moment in particular, I remember this young woman, and she's a little teeny tiny, adorable girl. She must have been 8 years old or something, and she's sitting there and she's making straws move one at a time. And of course, Benjamin and I are, we're looking at each other. We're like, is this really happening in front of us right now? And then I remember the teacher saying, okay, now blow it with your breath. Use your nose. And she does it, and they all move at the same time. And then she's like, okay, now do it again with your mind. And it would be one straw at a time going. So, you know, again, to the extremely skeptical mind, you're always going to be able to hold on to that skepticism if that's what you need. But for us, it's really fun when you see this stuff, and it just is, you know, it's just part of the ride that we're on. I think one of the moments for us very early on where we had a lot of these, oh my God moments, like, is this really happening, was when we went to a blind school. You know, because we had seen this, and there's always going to be some skepticism around a blindfold, right? Because there just will be. It's just such an easy thing to be skeptical of. So one of the very first shoots that we went on was, we were in India, and they were bringing this program to a school for blind students. And the students didn't even know what was going to be offered to them. You know, they had made an arrangement with the school, and they went there, and we're watching kids who were born blind, who have no ability to see, whose eyes are completely white, who have no reference for color, who only know how to read using Braille. And it was a big room. So we had 3 cameras, and we put certain people on lavaliers who we thought, you know, we would monitor, but we were also going to move around. So I remember the teachers, there's a couple of teachers, but then they have assistants. They want one assistant either per every 2 kids, sometimes per every 1 kid, because they want to practice with them. So the program itself, you know, just to, this is always a question that comes up, what is this program? And it's a bit of body movement, a little bit of breath work, and a guided meditation, and then it's just practice.
Right.
They're sort of activating their intuition, and then they're doing exercises to help them discern, I would say, the sound of their intuition versus their intellect, which is why with kids who have vision, they're putting a blindfold on them. They put the blindfold on, hand them these cards, and they're like, all right, what's your first thought? What are you seeing? What are you seeing? And then they see that they're getting it right. They'll say, oh, I see a dog or a blue or whatever. And they're like, wow, I'm getting it right over and over again. And they start to trust that.
Right.
With the
Trust
blind,
that inner spark or that inner voice. Yeah.
that inner voice, they start to be able to really hear it and trust it 100%. And then with the kids who are blind, so we go in there not having covered this. This is very weird stuff to even learn how to cover on film. And so I just remember saying to the assistants, if a kid starts getting it right, raise your hand and we'll come over there. And I'm thinking, it's going to happen a couple of times throughout the afternoon. Very quickly, all the hands start going up. So I'm like,
wow.
oh my God. And so we focused in as best we could. And I will say that there was one young man who really stood out. And he stood out to me from the second that we arrived. I would just describe him as like sunshine. This kid was just beaming. He was probably 14, 13 years old. Had one of those smiles that just had so much gravity to it. You just wanted to be around him.
Yeah.
He was just so joyful and so kind. And he was working with one of the main students who we had already been following, who has vision. She came to assist. And so I could hear her microphone, and she's talking to him. She's like, whoa. And her mind is getting blown.
Right.
She has these abilities, and can't believe what's happening in front of her. So I go over there, and he's reading, you know, without Braille. And some of it was by association. She handed him a card. It said banking. He put his hand on it, and he's like, accounting. So we're always trying to figure out what is even going on.
Right.
How does this work? I still to this day really couldn't tell you.
Right.
So for him, there was some kind of association going on. He was saying accounting, and it said banking. She handed him a card of a golden pear that was cut in half. He touched it. He's like, it's golden jewelry. So he wasn't getting it 100% right, but then he was getting it. And then he was starting to get more and more things right. And then at one point, they do different exercises that are kind of playful. He moves up to the very front of the room in front of the teacher, and 2 of the students go to the way back who are assistants. And the teacher says, okay, do a yoga pose. And everyone in the class, just catch your first thought and imitate that. He was the first one up doing it exactly like they were doing it, like, 50 feet or even more behind him. And he knew. He was shouting out to the teacher, correct, I got it correct. And we're watching this stuff. So, it's...
And just to be clear, he's blind.
He's completely blind.
Yeah.
Some of the students weren't completely blind. Some of them had different degrees of vision. He did not.
Right.
And you could see by looking at his eyes.
Yeah.
And he just got it,
Yeah.
So you start to see the implication. Obviously, kids who have vision, wearing a blindfold and doing activities is not very useful. You don't need to do that.
Right.
So I think, to be honest, that the blindfold can become a bit of a distraction for outsiders kind of looking at this phenomenon.
Right.
I would say the most incredible and important things, and the reason why we've devoted all of these years is because we're seeing young people move through the world in a way that's really connected. Connected to themselves, connected to this sort of deeper source of knowing that's beyond the intellect.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're moving through the world not only a lot more joyfully and with more confidence and more creativity, but with more service, because I think that's also our nature.
Yeah.
When you feel like you're connected to everything and everyone, you very quickly start taking responsibility for everything and everyone that's around you, but not as a burden, as your very nature.
Yeah.
And that's how these kids are moving through their communities, their families. As we're talking to the parents, they're looking to these young people who are in their early teens as leaders in the family.
Yeah.
They don't worry about them.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, what extracurricular activities are you going to do? What college do you want to go to? What career do you want to pursue? And the kids know with such conviction, but in such a light way. They're like, I'm going to that school. I'm doing that. This is what I want to do. And it's so matter of fact. It's like they're living their Dharma, their purpose. It's very clear to them. And they're not, like so many of us, always struggling. Well, should I do this? Should I do that? What am I supposed to do? What's expected of me? What does society want of me? What does success look like? All of these things. They have that inner knowing that's guiding them, and the ripple effects of that in their family, in their schools, in their community. It's like these just waves of peace that you see, and joy, and not that hard things don't happen, not that they don't face challenges, but their buoyancy is just absolutely incredible. So I think that's why Benjamin and I were just like, this is a story worth telling.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you know, it reminds me a lot of the book. Do you know the book, The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukov?
No, I don't.
So Oprah Winfrey said that it was her favorite book and really transformed her life. She wrote the 25th anniversary preface to it. Love the book. I read it this year a couple of times. And, you know, what Gary Zukov says in that book is that a lot of the suffering we have in the world is because of this framework of the five sensory human, that there's nothing beyond, you know, our five senses. And to become multisensory and realize that there is this, you know, source beyond, you know, the divine, you know, heaven, however you want to look at it, that the universe is playful, really would just, that alone, if everybody could wake up and see that, would alleviate so much suffering, because people would be able to grasp at that. And I think that that's why the Telepathy Tapes has been so popular. It's not just the awe and wonder of how are these children that are profiled in the Telepathy Tapes for the first season that can't speak. You know, they don't have that auditory ability, but they have this ability to speak to someone's mind, you know, whether it's their caretaker or whether it's their mom. It's actually a message of hope. You know, the thing that I loved about how season 1 ended is the non-speakers give their message to humanity in terms of what they wish for all of us. And one of the things that they say is that we all have these abilities. It's just for whatever reason they're turned off in us. And why do you think they're turned off in us?
I just absolutely agree with everything that you said. And I wouldn't necessarily say that they're turned off. I would say that maybe we're not honoring them the way that we should. Maybe we're distracted by this outer world of our five senses so much that we've equated that to reality, and we're ignoring this whole other side of reality.
Right.
I think that we all have these abilities. That's been my experience. I think it's easier for kids to strengthen them, to exercise them at a younger age. There's less unlearning for them to do. Their brain isn't so wired in such a binary way of this is what's real, this is what's not real, and this is what's possible, and locked into the intellect, where they can have this more holistic experience of perceiving the world and themselves and their connection to it. So how has it happened? I think you have guests on who are a lot more experienced and smarter than me that could probably tell you, you know, if you look back at our recent history over the last couple of 100 years and our education system and, you know, the industrial revolution and all of the things that we've done to really just focus, becoming the same, becoming sort of, you know, cogs in a machine that can repeat tasks over and over again, to behave, to fall in line, all of that kind of stuff that we've ignored this other side of us.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I think that I want to emphasize that there has been so much good that has come out of the rise of science, that has come out of the rise of the Industrial Revolution, the rise of capitalism. Billions of people alleviated out of starvation, poverty, but we have to get back to becoming more human again. And I think that's a really, really important aspect of the work that you're doing with intuition, with this documentary, the work that the Telepathy Tapes is doing, is getting back to that, really learning how to use, our bodies and minds. Episode 9 with John and Lauren, where they're talking about Evolve, which is an amazing device. We experienced it here in this room. It's a meditation device that can take you into really deep states. And it's guiding you the whole time and measuring all your brain waves. John made the point of our bodies are amazing, that we need to unlock those powers again.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just what you said, where those brainwaves, if we're constantly stuck in the intellect, in this world of activity, in this world of the five senses, where we're bringing in information and saying, this is what's true, this is what's not true, this is what I like, what I don't like, my preferences, my desires, all that, we're limiting our perception of reality to a very specific realm. And there's a whole other, when you can quiet the mind and move to these other dimensions of yourself through practices like meditation, you're going to experience heightened intuition in yourself, and that's been my experience. I think working with these kids, witnessing these kids the last few years has allowed me to give myself more permission to do that. But I think as someone who's been meditating for so many years anyway, we all have that deep inner knowing that that's the truth.
Yeah.
And it can be little things like, I'm thinking of someone that I haven't thought of for a long time, and suddenly a text comes through on your phone. Very little things to much more profound things, like why did I stop before driving around that corner, and then come to find out there was an accident right up there. I mean, there are just so many wild stories, and that's what I've been hearing more and more after I've started this film. As I said, my background has been much more traditional social issue documentary, and so I'm almost a little apologetic when someone's like, what are you working on now? And I feel like I'm coming out as a meditator. I'm like, well, it's a little different, and it's about, consciousness and intuition and kids with these abilities. And I'm waiting for people to roll their eyes, and it's 95% of the time, it's been just the opposite. People are waiting to tell me their story of intuition, inner knowing that they have, inexplicable things that happen in their lives.
Right.
So I think in a way, we're ready. We're ready to kind of take these conversations out of the margins and start having them in a more mainstream way, because we understand that this is the way to peace within ourselves, to peace in our society, to peace in the world. We have to acknowledge that we're much more than just these little transmitters of consciousness, but in fact we're receivers.
There's no doubt that there's a consciousness awakening underway. I mean, I see it all over the place. And I've experienced it too, for sure. Well, what's your thesis on why that's happening? Because it really is coinciding with many factors. It's coinciding with the rise of AI. It's coinciding with a real assault on our senses. I think that there's a 24/7 kind of hijacking of our amygdala underway, which is our fear center. I always like to remind people that we're in the Homo sapiens that for 0.1% of our existence here on Earth are experiencing electricity. And that doesn't mean everybody in the world's experiencing electricity, but most people have experienced it, or they have it all the time. Of course, we have it for the most part in America all the time. And so that means that our scarcity mindset and our amygdala, our fear center, has been really well developed for real scarcity. We have abundance today that people couldn't imagine. But you have this coinciding with this 24/7 media barrage on, can we make you scared? Versus all the amazing stories that are happening all over the world that are beautiful acts of love, and connection. The constant social media hijacking. Jason Karp was here at our home yesterday, as was Mark Gober for the dinner. Jason was on episode 3. and he talked about the constant hijacking of our bodies with food, chemically engineered food to keep us just addicted to it. You've got the pharmaceutical complex. So you have all these challenges happening at the same time as this rise of AI and this connectivity that we've never had before in human history, but yet, and it was in your segment last night, this epidemic of loneliness and depression. So what do you think is happening with this consciousness awakening?
Out of necessity, I guess. My teacher, my meditation teacher, who you saw in that clip also, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, talks about how opposite values are complementary, and you can't have the light without the shadow.
Right.
That one exists because of the other, in contrast to the other. And in this moment where we are talking about some of the most extreme things that we've certainly experienced in our lifetimes, where our kids and our own consciousness is being hacked, where fear has become this way for companies to profit and to, and so I think if we know and we have this experience that we are all connected, then an answer is going to rise, in response to that.
Right.
I always think that some of my greatest teachers in my life on my journey so far have been the people who have been the worst to me, that they've caused the most pain in my life. If you're able to show up to those experiences and survive them and get through the other side and then reflect on them, you can kind of turn that into gratitude, and you realize, wow, they sparked real growth, real spiritual growth, whatever it might be, in so many different ways. And I suppose we could say that about what's going on the planet, where we now have social media. We now have the ability to see the most horrible things simultaneously all over the planet, which I also think is a little shocking to our system. I don't know if we're really wired to know about everything all at once in that way, because we're such empathetic creatures, and then we want to, respond to that. But I would say it feels to me like it's nature correcting what's going on. If we are all truly connected to each other, then our response is, how do I help you? When you see a kid, at the playground and he falls, you want to run over and pick him up. You're not just like, is that my kid? Is that someone that I know? Like, it's our instinct to help each other and to uplift. And so I just feel like this is consciousness's way of, as people are going into this loneliness epidemic, kids are cutting, and the suicide is on the rise, and all of these things. There's also such beauty and connectivity and, people like Jason and who are just finding all these other ways that we can care for ourselves, we can care for each other, and we can support each other.
Yeah. Well, you're part of it, brother. You're definitely part of the consciousness awakening. This is your life's work. I mean, I know that this project is the most important to you in your life. I mean, your entire career.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. I feel like the past 20-something years making films, and as you know, it's been everything from like wrongful conviction in the Philippines, the veterans, suicide epidemic in the US, gay rights in the Middle East and all over the world, and environmental rights. Like, it's spanned the whole spectrum. And I think, as you know, also with every single one of my films, I do an impact campaign, and we try to use this piece of media to go out and move the needle on whatever issue it is that we're trying to raise awareness around. So we partner with organizations, and we're like, how can this film supercharge what you're already doing? And we see how effective it is.
Right.
And I think that's what's kept me in this game for the past couple of decades, because it's not a glamorous life. It's, I love it, and I'm learning, and it's challenging and all those things, but it's also a lot of work. But it's been very rewarding. And I think what's happened recently is I've realized that it feels like triage, what we're doing. I feel like as I point to all of these different things that are going on, we're putting Band-Aids on them. And what's underneath it all is our consciousness, you know, the quality of our consciousness, this feeling of disconnectedness that we have from ourselves, therefore from each other, that's leading to all of these things. So yeah, it's going to manifest as greed in this politician who's now destroying the last rainforest in the Philippines, or it's going to lead to fear in this community that's trying to oppress and hurt the LGBT community. It's coming out in all of these different ways, but there's something at the root of it that we need to start getting to.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is why making this film feels like the most important work I will have ever done.
Yeah.
You know, because it's showing that from a very young age, we can start to move through the world differently.
Yeah.
That when, you know, if there are going to be organizations out there that are trying to hack our consciousness, that our kids have the ability to discern what's real from what's not real, that have the capacity to put the phone down and walk away and go play and do all the other things. And that's what I'm seeing.
Right.
And then they're going to be the ones that are growing up to become business leaders, innovators, doctors, you know, in these technology companies, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when they're seeing, like, when they see the world through this lens of we're all connected, we're all in this together, it's not just how much can I gain from myself, it's going to be a much different world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're going to be the embodiment of what Gary Zukov was talking about in The Seat of the Soul, that they're going to be able to navigate that much better and with a lot more love and lead from the heart. You know, we were talking about that at dinner last night, that a huge part of what they're being taught is how to open the heart. That was in that amazing book, Into the Magic Shop by James Doty. I was mentioning that book to you on this trip. Incredible book where, you know, Ruth, the mother of the owner of this magic shop, taught a very, very troubled 12-year-old in a horrible situation with an alcoholic father, you know, constantly, attacking his mom and just horrible things happening at home, you know, really taught him how to find his own intuition. He didn't use the word in that book, but that's what he's talking about, how to breathe, how to meditate, how to quiet his mind, how to open his heart, how to manifest, you know, very, very Joe Dispenza-like in terms of what he was learning. And if the whole world got to see that we're not just locked in this world of form and these five senses, then I would be 100% positive that we were going to make it to the age of abundance for all.
I agree. And I think it's more than just seeing it, it's experiencing it. And it's not that difficult. It's exactly what you said. How do we move from the head to the heart? What are the practices that we can do to get out of our intellect for a little while and get into our heart, get into our gut? And they're simple. There's breathing techniques. Like, as you know, we did some of this stuff yesterday.
I know, that was so cool. Yeah, my sister and niece were over here, and you really helped Deborah too, my wife. Like, she loved the meditations. We all loved it, but that was such a cool experience with you.
Yeah, I think that's the secret. I think there's going to be a million books written about this. There's going to be lots of ways for us to prove that we need to be living more like that. But I think the actual work is having that experience and just doing it. You know, getting quiet, like having the discipline in our own daily life to say, I'm going to sit. I'm going to find a practice that works for me, whether it's a meditation practice, breathing technique, whatever it is, to get into that space. And then the more you do that, the more you bring that into the world of activity, into your daily life. And the less, I think, that grip of the material world and the intellect has on you. You get to move into that sort of witness consciousness a little faster. You know, when your emotions come up and your anger and your fear and all of these things, you start to notice them as opposed to just being, you know, having them dictate all of your behavior for the next couple of weeks. You get back to your center. Your buoyancy is a lot better. So, I mean, that for me is like, it feels like what the whole game is all about. How are we raising our prana, our chi, our energy? How are we getting into our heart? How are we celebrating that, normalizing that, bringing that into schools, bringing that into workplaces. Like, what are we doing to make space for that?
Yeah.
And the intellect is important, and our ego is important. I need to know, that we're separate from each other in certain aspects of life. And then I also have to have that experience of oneness too, because you learn so much from that. And so that's what I feel like we're moving into. When you talk about the age of abundance for all, I think it is. It's a new moment where we're honoring the heart as much as the head, where we're moving from both places. We don't need to move away from capitalism and democracy and all of these things. I think it's all important, but there needs to be some spirituality too. I think we're spiritual beings, and so many of those conversations were taboo for so long. It's just, oh, that's superstition and that's nonsense. But the second you start to experience these deeper levels of yourself, the more you just value it, and the more undeniable it is as just such a deep source of joy.
Yeah. So I'd love to ask you about the founder for The Art of Living, because we've talked about him some over the past couple of days, and I'm really fascinated with him. As you know, I went to India with Deborah, have studied Vedanta with Swamiji Parthasarathi. Vedanta really changed my life. It taught me how the mind is a very noisy place, and you can be stuck into a constant, worry about the past and anxiety about the future, and just completely miss the present moment. And that helped me a lot as a leader, as a CEO, over multiple companies, just be in the present, and, really helped me make good decisions too. Listen to people, not just be thinking about, the next thing. And I know he's had a big influence on you, and now obviously he's got a great team for The Art of Living, but it's having a compounding influence, worldwide, with helping these children realize their gifts. And I've seen clips where he is emphasizing, look, everybody, this is like a human right. Everybody has these abilities. They just need to be brought out. So tell us about him.
Sure. Well, his name's Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and oh my gosh, I would say, he was not someone, honestly, that I was looking for in my life. It was just someone who I came to learn about him through the practices that he shares in the world, which it's kind of like what you said, this tendency that we have for our mind to be stuck in the past, whether it's, regretting or glorifying, or in the future, either worrying or, again, planning. And it's that vacillation that causes so much stress in our nervous system, and that inability to be in the present moment. Him recognizing that and knowing that there are techniques, very powerful, simple techniques that everyone should have access to, no matter your background, or, and so he made it his life's mission to share that. So it came to me because I was an insomniac. In my 20s, I had a horrible time sleeping, and I was kind of, living the New York City dream. I was an art director some years out of art school. I was doing great, and from the outside, I looked very successful. I had a lot of stress, wasn't sleeping, all that kind of stuff. And my partner at the time had some friends visiting from the Philippines, and one said, oh, I do this thing called the Sudarshan Kriya. It's called sky meditation for short. And now I sleep like a baby. So we just signed up for this course blindly. There happened to be an she's like, it's through this organization called The Art of Living. We're like, okay, whatever it is, I'm just going to do it. So we found that there was an Art of Living center in New York City. We went and took this course. Over the course of a few days, I learned this breathing technique, and it changed my life. It was like someone took, I don't know, it was like I had been seeing through like a dirty window that was all black and white, and it was like someone just came and washed it. And I was like, whoa, this is fantastic. It's a purifying technique, really, is what it is, the Sudarshan Kriya. And it gets rid of a lot of the stress, from your nervous system. The more you do it, the deeper it goes, because we accumulate it. I mean, some would say over lifetimes. And I quickly was just like getting back to myself. It wasn't that I was suddenly now becoming this monk or this like yogi. I was just feeling like myself again, like that kid again. That part of me that hadn't gone through so much stress and trauma that had been accumulated over the years. So I just stuck with that breathing technique. It worked for me. And I can go into this more later, but 3 months later, I quit my job and jumped on a plane to the Philippines to make my first film. And I'll tell you, if I didn't have this practice, I wouldn't have survived that. I wouldn't have finished that film.
Tell me about that film. And
Sure.
Because I know that was really, on the surface, it seemed extremely stressful.
Oh yeah, it was. It was stressful on every level.
Okay, not just on the surface. Okay. You had the breathing technique to at least calm
I
you
had
down.
the breathing technique, thank God, which I mean was total divine timing. I could, I really believe that. So my partner and I, so he's Filipino. His brother's brother-in-law was on death row in the Philippines for a crime that they claim he didn't commit. Marty, who was my filmmaking partner, his brother reaches out to me and he's like, listen, my brother-in-law's on death row. The Supreme Court just upheld the decision. He's going to be executed in 18 months. I know you do animation. I know that's part of your background. Could you look at some of the injustices that happened in his trial, make an animation and put it up online? This is the early 2000s. And I'm like, Marty, is this guy really innocent? And he's like, I mean, I think so, but I don't know. It's a really complicated case. I've been living away from the Philippines for so long. I do all this research. Not only is this guy innocent, but it's just like, it's like a Kafka novel. It's just completely insane what has happened to him. And I felt an immediate connection to him. He had been in jail for 7 years at the time. I had been in New York City for 7 years. I think about all the lifetimes I had lived and how much I had grown and how much my life had changed. And I think he's been stuck in jail. And it was like, I just felt a connection to him and like a responsibility. We had no choice. I bought a camera. I had some experience with video, I would say, in time-based media, but not documentary filmmaking. Quit my job, Marty quit his job, and we flew to the Philippines. And we began this investigation. And it was terrifying. I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
But I had a lot of conviction. And there were, it was scary. There was a drug lord behind this that really used him as a scapegoat, him and his friends, to get the attention off of them. And they made it a big media kind of frenzy. And everyone was against him. The whole country believed that this kid was a monster, and he wasn't. And that's what we were working against. And we were working against forces that were pretty terrifying. And people were scared to come out and talk to us. We just spent months and months like trying to navigate all of this. So I'll just fast forward a bit. We got through it. If I didn't have the ability to come home at the end of each day and do this breathing technique and clear my system, I wouldn't have been able to be present. I remember the first time I sat in front of his parents. In the beginning, they said that they weren't going to allow me to interview them. They're like, we'll connect you to other people. But they had been so burned by the media that they said, and they didn't know me. So I was probably just some other person who was going to come in and take their story and twist it and do something terrible. They got to see me interviewing other people, and then they were like, oh, we trust this guy. So I sat down with them. I wasn't even prepared to. If I didn't have a meditation practice, if I didn't have that ability to get centered, I wouldn't have been able to be present for them. And I think that was something I learned very quickly, was how I showed up on set, how vulnerable I got, how much I was present and there from the heart and not from the head. I wasn't thinking, this is the thing I need you to say. It was like, how can I sit here in front of you and be completely naked in a certain way so that you feel like you can share yourself with me. And it's from that we're going to be able to tell the best story. And that was my experience. It was just doing that time and time again throughout this process. It's a long story. It's a long journey. That film took us 6 years to make. Ultimately, we did a short version that came out on television that helped to get him out of the Philippines. He was half Spanish, half Filipino, so we brought it to Spain, and we did something that was very targeted to a Spanish market. Their politicians got involved. They went and petitioned and it helped to get the death penalty abolished there. You know, we partnered with Amnesty International and the Innocence Project and all of these groups. And then we went on to make a film that premiered at Tribeca, and that really showed the whole world that this guy was innocent. So after he was transferred to Spain, ultimately he gained more and more freedom, you know, because they believed that he was innocent.
And I know you know, one of the things I love about you is you're so deeply humble, but I do want to pull this out of you. The film did really well. First of all, the name of the film.
It's called Give Up Tomorrow. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, at Tribeca, we won 2 top prizes. We got the Audience Award. I got a Best New Director prize. And that film played all over the world. It was kind of a festival darling, and it won Audience Awards all over the world and other things. And it was nominated for an Emmy. So it was, and I'm not just saying this to sound humble, but I mean, every single one of these projects is a community effort.
Right.
It's the result of so many people showing up. But yeah, you have to show up at the center of it too, and kind of hold that intention. But I find with every film that I've been a part of, when you say, this is our goal, this is what we're going to do, it gives people the opportunity to join you and be of service in some way. It gives people an opportunity to be their best selves. And I feel like that's when we're aligned towards a common goal, you just see the best in people.
Yeah.
And documentary filmmaking and production has that built right into it.
Yeah.
You know, and while it's hard and we're not sleeping much and we might be out before dawn trying to catch this shot and do this and sneaking cameras into a maximum security prison and running from drug lords and all the different things, you just know that it's exactly what you're supposed to be doing at that moment. And there's that. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to Paco, who is this young man who we were making the film about, because I feel like he gave me that gift to see what was my Dharma. What is it that I'm doing here? Am I meant to be in New York City making a lot of money for these other guys at this communications company? No. You know, it was like I got to be of service, to create art, to build community, you know, and just to be on this journey where to this day, it's like, I just can't believe how lucky I am to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. To be of service, you know.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the human project, is to be of selfless service to each other, to ultimately allow each other, to allow love to conquer our own fears, to manifest love in each other, to walk the way, you know, walk with the Tao, however you want to look at it. That's why we're here. And,
I agree.
And it's beautiful seeing your heart that way, because I do have to pull it out of you, and I want to reframe it. It's different than humility. It's actually because you're so deeply service and purpose oriented with it, that to you, that's the reward, not the success that comes with it.
Yeah.
And the two are so intertwined, though, because people can see that. You know, that's the beauty of a documentary, is they can feel it. You know, we could feel that last night in this room.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I equate the success of these, that just means more, that whatever this issue is that we're trying to get out in the world, it's going to have more visibility. It's going to have more impact. Success equals impact. So, and you have to say it sometimes. You're like, it was nominated for this and this and this, and that allows you to do the next thing, and it just brings more attention to it. But, you know, you said something earlier that resonated with me a lot about being able to get quiet to listen. Right? Because if we're just stuck in our head in what we think we should be doing or shouldn't be doing, or planning or regretting, we're not hearing what's going on. And I think that's one of the greatest lessons that I've gotten by making these films, coupled with my meditation practice, is like, I realize I have no control over what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with this intuition film. Is it going to go to some big festival? Is it going to go, where is it going to land? I have no idea, but I just need to be able to show up every day 100% and recommit to making it, and then listen to where it wants to go. Listen to what's needed next. Listen to my friend who says, hey, come out to Austin and, spend a couple of days with me and meet people or whatever it is, and be able to move towards that.
Yeah. I'm so glad you answered the call.
Yeah.
This has been such a beautiful trip together.
Yeah.
I know you're a fan of Rick Rubin, and last night over the dinner here, we were talking about the creative act, and the reason I bring that up is that you've been talking about that the universe wants you to make intuition. Tell me about that. You can feel it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's part of making space to get still. You can hear what your next move is supposed to be. And I think especially for creative people, I would say that we're all creative.
Rick Rubin makes that point in the creative act.
Yeah.
He really makes the point that there are people that are labeled as creatives, but everybody has innate ability to create.
I agree with that 100%. That's been my experience. I think that, when I was talking, one thing that I've noticed with all these kids who are doing these intuition practices, the number one thing I would say across the board is their creativity just surfaces and goes through the roof. Parents who are like, oh, my kid was much more of a scientist and into this and more on the other side of the brain, and suddenly they're playing with the piano or whatever. And it's not to say that being a mathematician is not creative, because 100% is, but they're just seeing that their need for creative expression is just, it's something that they make space for.
Right.
They just can't help themselves. So, in my own life, I've known since I was very young that that's like oxygen for me. And I think that's why I was suffocating so much when I got out of art school and I went into New York City. And from the surface, I was in the marketing department at like Bear Stearns for a little while. Of course, I was making creative things. And then I moved to a much more creative position at a smaller, more boutique company where I was an art director and head of animation and doing all kinds of different things. But still, it was so driven by corporate kind of greed, if I'm being honest. And there was just a part of me that was just suffocating. So I think the quieter I get, the more I make space for that, and the more, just the same way that I guess we make space to take care of different aspects of our life and ourself. Like I try to hold sacred a little bit of time for creative play in my life. I spend a lot more time painting and writing now, that stuff that no one may ever see, but for me sometimes it's the most joyful part of my day, and it just changes everything throughout the rest of the day. But I don't know. I like that, if you think about this organization, we started this kind of thread by talking about the art of living, and Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, Gurudev, that's the way that he sees it. Like, living is an art. We are creative beings, and this life is a play.
Right.
And are we the director? Are we the main actor? Are we both? Who knows?
Right.
But it is an element of play. And everything that we do, we're creating, we're co-creating. And to ignore that, I think, for me, it led to, addictive behavior and all that kind of stuff. I was drinking a lot, doing a lot of things that weren't actually nurturing my creativity.
Right.
Over the years, I never tried to. I never said I'm going to give up drinking or recreational drugs or all smoking or all the other things that I did in excess. They all just naturally fell away. And I just feel so much more myself. I feel like there's so much more space to be creative, to be connected, to be of service. And at this point in my life, it's effortless, like to a certain degree.
Yeah. I mean, I found the same thing as I've walked more and more of a path of service to humanity and spirituality, which is different than religious dogma. I mean, I've covered that a lot on this podcast. I notice that the bad habits have just fallen away. I get sick almost never. I stopped drinking alcohol. I have been a vegetarian for about 15 years now. And I just feel great. My biomarkers at age 53 are better than they were at age 40, and I just feel alive. I feel happy. Now, of course, I get stressed without a doubt. I will tell you, before that meditation yesterday, I was in a state of stress because right now I'm on the clock for, my book, Love Conquers Fear, with the subtitle Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All. And I'm on a writing deadline. And so, after you fly out and after I have this really important meeting with one of my best friends in Dallas on Sunday, my next week is just boom, just like I'm just going to lock myself in a room and be writing because I've really got to get that done. And I really want to get it done. I'm writing it with a lot of love. I'm pouring a lot of my heart into it. So I don't want to make myself sound like I'm superhuman, because I'm not. But when you walk that path, you just have such a different level of energy. And I just, a huge part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast, maybe the reason I'm doing this podcast, I'm self-funding it, there's no ads or anything, is just to help humanity have a heart shift. That's what I think is required for us to make it to this beautiful age, whether you look at it mystically or metaphorically, this heaven and earth merging. I mean, just imagine if a country like Chad, which has a GDP of $660 per person, could have the type of abundance we have in America, and what that would do to the world. Like if Chad had that kind of abundance, we'd have abundance everywhere. And I think that we're in this time where that's upon us. But we have to choose it, we have to grasp at it.
And it's interesting when you say, in a way, these life choices that you've made that, seems to have made you your best self, where you're now moving so much from the heart, so much in service. You could also say that that's intuition. Mm-hmm. You let go of these things because they weren't serving you. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, to go back to Gurudev, I've heard him say once, when you're a kid, you want ice cream all the time. It's mm-hmm. the most important thing. And you'd have it every day if someone would give it to you, or you want to be right by your mother, like kind of tugging on her skirt. As you get older, you let go of these things. It's not a conscious effort. Mm-hmm. But now it's just you just know. There's just this inner knowing that's like, this is not serving me anymore. So right. We're able to let go of all of these other things and be ourselves. And I think when we are our best selves, we're automatically moving from the heart, we're automatically moving in service and mm-hmm. in creativity.
Yeah. Well, fear is for sure a contractor, and love is an opener. And, Jason Karp made a really good point at the dinner last night, where he said it's very hard to tap into your intuition if you're just in a constant state of stress and fear. And then, that can just be such a downward spiral where it's not just that, it's that you're in pain, you're suffering. And so alcohol use goes up, you start binging, a bunch of meaningless TV, and just on and on and on. And there's just no end to that. It's very hard to kind of break out of that cycle.
Right. And I think that's why, we call it a practice. Like if you have a practice, there is an element of discipline, but the same way that we brush our teeth every day for sort of dental hygiene, once you start to feel the benefits of it, mm-hmm. it's no longer like this thing that you're fighting to do. Like I know you exercise almost every single day mm-hmm. and you enjoy it, right? Because you feel the benefits.
Yeah, we have fun doing that together. Yeah. You get to see my routine.
Right. And I think it's the same with things that enhance your intuition and your state of mind. Mm-hmm. Like you're saying, if you're just binge drinking and watching all this mindless stuff, your energy is going down. You could say your prana is moving from the top, is from high to low as opposed to low to high. Right. And there's a contraction that happens there. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about. It's like, how do we just keep on moving it up? So you make a little discipline, you do it a little bit every day, and then it becomes your nature, mm-hmm. And then when you don't do it, you're like, why do I feel a little bit foggy this afternoon? No, I didn't do my practice this morning. Right. And it just becomes more and more simple.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, I think everyone also has access to their intuition. That's another question that comes up a lot. Yeah. I think when you make time to do that stuff, everyone's like, why is it for kids, just for kids? You were saying how Jason says when it's a stressor, you don't have access to your intuition. 100%. That's right. These kids are getting a practice that's very simple. They do it on like an app on their phone every day. The young ones for like 7 minutes. The old kids are probably closer to 20 minutes. And it's just that. It's just getting the stress out of their nervous system. The more you're in that space, the more intuitive you are. And that goes for absolutely everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the genius part for this modern age of this Art of Living program, is that it's very time efficient. As people, there's this false belief about people that walk a spiritual path that you have to give up capitalism and you have to give up all these things you're good at. And, you know, I even saw it with Vedanta in India. So with Vedanta, I was hanging out with some YPO friends. You know, I'm in Young Presidents Organization. I've been in it for 16 years. And it's a huge worldwide organization of CEOs, essentially. And they were like, oh, you're studying Vedanta. Like, what are you going to go up to the top of the Himalayas and just like meditate, et cetera, and that's how you're going to live your life? And I said, no, you don't get it. Like, if you visit a place where there are people there that live in the Vedanta Academy, which is where I went to study, and they're there, that means that their natural calling is to be a teacher. That's why they're there. My natural calling is to be a creator in business, and it'll make me better at that. So, you know, you're under a false assumption because you're seeing, you know, this structure and saying, oh, I don't want to be like that, because it's not your core nature. And, you know, people assume that walking a spiritual path is one where, you know, you're going to be spending all of your time doing that. And the reality is you can get recentered in a very time efficient type of way. I mean, just the breathing exercises you were taking us through yesterday, that was 12 minutes.
Yeah. And you know, again, to bring up Gurudev, the reason why he calls it the art of living, he's like, you need to be living in the world. He's like, this isn't the art of going and hiding in a cave in the Himalayas.
Right.
No, you do these practices, you become, you de-stress yourself, become your best self. He's like, you're needed in the world. He's like, whatever you do it 100%.
Yeah.
And maybe you're a student or a doctor or a homemaker, whatever it is, you do it 100%, you know, and you have these practices that are practical, that fit into your daily life to de-stress. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's not about, you have to put, you know, adopt robes and grow a beard and do all that. Certain people will. That's some people's calling. And they'll be the teachers, and they're really just there to reflect, you know, certain aspects of your own potential.
Right.
That's all. But it's, the whole thing is about, and my experience, it's about being in the world. And, you know, there are practices, you can go, you know, on some of these retreats, which I've heard about, where for 10 days you're just in complete silence and you're just diving straight into the deep end, and then meditating twice a day for an hour each. And for some of us, that's not so practical. And my experience is you can have really, really deep, profound experiences through techniques that are that fit into modern life. Much better.
It's a really important point to emphasize, because again, people have a very false assumption without even investigating it to know that that's possible. And the amazing thing about these schools is, again, they're going global. I mean, you know, your segment, I think it's already occurred in now 60 countries. Is that right?
And it's gone up since we made that. That this intuition program is in, I don't know how many countries now.
Right.
And the number of kids, and just all of the other programs for adults too. It's all over the world.
So we've kind of, I think, addressed this, but I want to ask you, what do you think this reality is that we're in right now? You know, how do you think about the world that we're in and the reality, you know, the veil that we are under right now?
I guess at this point, I've had enough experiences where I think that veil has gotten very thin and sometimes been pulled back at certain moments.
Yeah, same.
And so I think what we're seeing in this world is, is a very, it's a very small percentage of what's actually in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And my sense, my experience is that it feels more like school. It feels more like we come to work out some karmic lessons, where we come to really be our best to get over past traumas and to kind of move together towards the next level and bring as many people along with us as we can. I think it's a place, I don't think that there's this afterlife that is just heaven, that we just have this one life and then we go on to live forever, in some magical place. I feel my experience is that it's a little more cyclical, maybe a little more spherical, that we're coming back and ideally we're moving forward with lifetime after lifetime towards something that's beyond our comprehension in a lot of ways, and that's it. I just feel like we're here to care for each other and the planet, and to find peace within ourselves, to bring peace in the world around us, and to live the most expanded, kind of joyful life as possible. And it doesn't mean that there aren't horrible, painful things going on in the world, and that there aren't horrible, painful things that we'll experience ourselves.
Right.
But when you have that, I think it's important to have a wider perspective, so that you don't get stuck into thinking, I'm a victim, this shouldn't be happening to me, when you can start to see, this is a part of a bigger story. My life is very small. This life is very small in comparison to the bigger picture that I can't really comprehend, but I know that it's a part of something bigger. And that helps me to get back to my center and to move on again and to continue to fight against everything, and not lose hope. I would say, when you talk about this really optimistic version of the future, an age of abundance for all, I would like to think that that's our potential. That's all of our potential. And
there's no doubt in my mind that it is. I mean, one of the ways to think about it, by the way, I agree with everything you just said, so I don't want to just parrot it back to you, because I completely agree. It is completely possible, because if you and I, went in a time machine and went back to 1925 or 1825, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we would not be able to fathom, how little abundance we had back then to now. I mean, it's not even, it's hard to even reconcile, like, what we have today. Like, you and I were talking about on one of our hikes, just the magic of a hot shower alone is like, an amazing, luxury for humanity. The fact that we have electricity, we've talked about, we wouldn't even be able to fathom, like, being able to go into a supermarket like Whole Foods and everything that's available there, or Amazon, or, Uber, or any of these things. I mean, mobile phones. And time is getting very compressed right now. We're in an exponential curve. So, 10 years of tech progress, that's probably going to feel like 100 years of technological progress. It is completely possible. The downside of the amazing inventive capability we have right now with AI is that also every technology can be used for bad too. It's all up to us in terms of how we use it. So it also will have great destructive potential as well. And it's all about us making the right choices with it.
Right.
And that's where you and I are totally aligned on Team Humanity. You're doing your part to help humanity have a heart shift with intuition and your work. I'm doing this podcast and the businesses I've started and the businesses that I will start and the books I'm writing. The Lattice, my science fiction novella, is a positive vision of how humanity could make it, how humanity could unite, realize that realize what our reality is. If we could prove to everybody what our reality actually is, which I think will happen because of this technology acceleration, then humanity would see, oh wow, there is this world of light and love and the beyond. And our actual reality isn't this cold, dark, lifeless universe. It's full of energy, and we're energy. We're souls having this physical experience, and we're deeply, deeply rooted in love, but then we're just under assault in this world of form, just this constant barrage. And you almost need to be like Neo in the Matrix and just stop the bullets. And one of the things I love about your work is that focusing on young people, this next generation, their alcohol use is plummeting, their social media use is going down. They're just kind of like, no, I don't want the world that I don't want. I want the best parts of the world that my predecessors have created, but I don't want this manipulation machine. And humanity, I think, will increasingly make that choice. Realize that putting profit over people is not sustainable. It's leading to a lot of suffering, and it's just not. People are not going to feel good for working for companies like that. I mean, just like you left the job to do this, the next generation, you're not going to be able to hire them if you're saying, well, let's just put everybody in an algorithmic manipulation machine and try to keep them, almost stimulated in this fear response all the time, because then we can just sell ads and ads and ads. I just think this next generation is going to be like, no, I'm not going to take that. So that gives me great, great hope. If you really look at the data, the stats are there.
I agree 100%. And I think as, we're also nurturing our own consciousness and our capacity to tap into that source, the more that's normalized and shared and grows, that's going to, if that's rising at the same time as our technology is advancing, I think it'll be a counterbalance. Gurudev is establishing something he calls the Institute for Absolute Intelligence, which this intuition process is going to be housed in, and there's going to be a lot of research that they're kind of aggregating there with some of the top universities. And
Absolute intelligence, AI.
Exactly. So it's a play on words, because
Right.
what he always says is like, don't be afraid of the technology. He's like, the artificial intelligence is taking everything that's in the material world, in a sense. And he's like, you have access to something so much deeper. All of us, we have access to the source. He's like, all of us are like these, cell phones that have the ability to turn the Wi-Fi on that can connect to everything. And he's like, and we have those experiences. How can we do that more and more and more? And then you start to fear the technology less, and even just to go back to creativity, we were talking about that earlier. I don't think that it's going to replace so many different aspects of us. I do think that there's something so human about the act, about the creative act, that can never be replaced by AI. I think it can mimic things, but I think that there's something from our soul that gets imprinted in great works of art that we really are, in a way, downloading, that we're listening for and we're showing up to and like getting out there in the world, whether it's a painting or writing or a film or music or whatever it is. You can tell when you listen to it, and I think we as humans...
You can feel the love.
You can feel it. Yep. I had this experience when I was young, and I was in Paris, and I got this museum pass. And I was studying art at the time, and I was not big into the classic artists and the Impressionists. But I ended up somehow standing in front of Monet's water lilies that he had painted and into the walls of this specific museum in town. And I just started weeping. And I was like, that wasn't me. I wasn't someone who would go stand in front of an Impressionist painting and cry. Had no idea what was going on. And many, many years later, actually only just about a year or two ago, someone told me, oh, he painted those because his wife loved them so much and she had passed, and his son who had passed, and all of this, like, it was, in a way, it was for them, and it was him dealing with his own grief and sharing his love with them. And so I feel like there's communication that happens on such subtle levels across space and time that we can never really explain from the rational mind, but when we're present, we can experience, and it's, yeah, no technology can ever take that away from us.
Yeah, I agree. Have you ever been to the Sagrada de Familia?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that's a place where it moved me to tears. Just, it's the awe and wonder of that place is amazing. A must do for people in their lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of absolute intelligence, you know, in the film, the children sometimes are just downloading an entire new language to speak as well.
Yeah.
What's the most amazing example you've seen of that?
You know, I've been there, and a lot of times they'll just come as shapes and symbols, and the kids will have no idea what it is. You know, so as far as the language stuff, I've seen it, and I've seen it written a number of times from a couple of different kids, and they'll have to send it off, and like they'll do like Google searches that can't even find it, and it'll come back some months later. Someone will be like, oh, that was a ancient Chinese script that hasn't been used for 500 years, like, you know. And some of it is much more recent, and some of it's a different language, and there'll be these beautiful, more, you know, benevolent messages that are coming through, just like more like blessings or scripture or something like that, just advice or things like that. But it's really wild. I'm now seeing, it's been about a year or more since Benjamin and I have been to India. They've now gone to do intuition process 2, which is more advanced, and they're doing all kinds of new stuff. So now, instead of teaching the kids to see things in front of them, they're teaching them behind their head. They're doing more of the telekinesis practice. They're doing all kinds of stuff. So I'm curious. I'm going back to India in February, and
cool.
I'm just curious to see what is happening now that I didn't see before.
Thinking about this AI moment, you know, and being in the quote unquote, you know, creative field, right? Because again, we're all creative, but you certainly would fit the classical definition of a creative. How do you think about this moment with regards to, you know, this fear in Hollywood about, you know, is just everything going to be made by AI now? You know, things like Sora, you know, OpenAI's Sora, and you know, Google's VEO3, and you know, what do you think about all that?
I think it's something that we have to pay attention to. I think it's something that the different guilds are doing their best to stay in front of, and to get, you know, regulations in place that aren't going to remove the human element. Like I was just saying before, I think that our need for art to be coming from a very human place, I think it's like, in a way, it's like our densest form of communication that our heart is always going to long for. So anything that starts to mute that, I think that there is going to be some correction to it. For me right now, you know, Benjamin, who I'm making the film with, has his eye a little bit more on that space. Like, he tracks all of that stuff, and he's helping me understand ways that we can use it to help streamline some of our processes, just for efficiency.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So I think for that, you know, coming from a field that's underfunded, like notoriously, where we're always struggling, where we're wearing too many hats, I'm always thinking, how can I get into my, whatever, you know, I might perceive as my zone of creativity or genius or whatever, how can I get into that space the quickest? Because then I'm going to make the work that's the most effective in the world. And if I'm typing out transcripts and I'm searching through notebooks and doing all this kind of stuff, but if we can create you know, a companion that's taking all of our transcripts that I can then interact with, and it's like, here are the 5 times that so-and-so said this thing, and here's the time code. And so just, I think more efficiency to me allows for more creativity. Yeah. So I'm all for these tools so far, you know, I mean, and like you said, these changes are happening like on such an exponential curve that who knows what it's going to be like 6 months from now, a year from now. But the way that I'm welcoming it into my life is when it has to do with efficiency, when it has to do with things that I couldn't afford anyway. So if it's going to take me 3 years to get through this edit as opposed to 1 because I'm able to use some of these tools, and it's not because I'm cutting out people who I would pay otherwise, I don't have them. We don't have the resources anyway. It just means I'm going to be taking jobs in between and doing all this other stuff.
Right.
When it comes to making creative decisions or looking at it to make creative choices, that's when my stomach turns. You know, I find even in the edit, so if I'm just there, one of my favorite things to do after we shoot hundreds of hours of footage is just sit with it for days and days and get really quiet. And sometimes I'll play music that I feel like has to go, you know, that might go along with it. And I'll just kind of do what you said earlier. I just listen to it. I play it. I start to pull, this is good, this is better, this is better. I start to pull selects from it. And I think that there's a communication that's happening there. There's a signal that comes through there that I always want to be present for. I don't want to outsource that.
Right.
I don't want to ask some AI bot to like tell me what are the best shots that I have or any of that stuff. Because part of my process is re-ingesting those into my system.
Right.
That's the writing process for me when you're in the edit room.
But the beautiful thing is you can get to that creative work much faster if the kind of rote manual labor work is more taken care of.
Exactly.
Which is great. I mean, that's the way I look at this moment, is the barrier to creativity is being shattered.
Yes.
The other thing is that there are people that are not at all as experienced as you are at, you know, doing the camera shots and everything else, and they can prototype at least an idea.
Yep.
And you know, one of the people that went with us to the Grand Canyon, he is a pretty famous TV writer, and I spent a lot of time talking with him. And at the beginning of our trip, he was pretty dystopian actually about that. You know, about the AI could take it all. And then by the end, I learned a lot about what it takes to make a TV show or a movie. And he said, you know, one of the big problems is that you have a budget and you can have your ideas for the types of shots, but you're limited to that budget. And so if it doesn't work, like, you've kind of blown the budget, right? And at the end, he turned really optimistic with me. I you know, it wasn't like I was making it my mission to turn him into an optimist. I was just trying to educate him on it. And he really, by the end, he was like, oh, wow, like, yeah, you could test out like so many different types of camera shots and concepts, you know, prototype them to make a much better product when you actually went to do the shots themselves. And I think that's super exciting. And that really makes me think that we're going to have a future of much better educational entertainment as well as just plain entertainment when it comes to watching documentaries, movies, TV shows. And we're going to have a lot more of it too, because the efficiency is going to go way up. You know, a lot of the, like, if we could have the creative act, you know, to channel Rick Rubin for a second, if we could have that happen a lot more, great. And I agree with you, you know, it needs to, the deeply, deeply creative part of it needs to come, as Rick Rubin would say, as a download, right? And then to be acted on. But the companion piece of AI to make you more efficient, where you can get to that creative act over and over again, I think is really going to be beautiful.
Technology, in my experience, you know, over these past, 25 years, it democratizes like certain things, you know, as like an independent filmmaker, I'm able to do things that doesn't require a millions of dollar budget, right? Like, technology has made, I can edit on my laptop a 4K film while I'm sitting on a plane.
Right.
You know, it's like,
yeah,
things, so I'm all for it. And I think as these tools come up and people learn how to incorporate them into the palette of creativity as opposed to a replacement for creativity, we're going to see new innovations and new forms of creative expression. And the things that are just generated by art that look familiar, that don't have that heart behind them, I think they'll exist. But I think they're going to remain in their place and be their own kind of thing. I mean, you could have you could have any one of these, you know, like ChatGPT, write a book on any topic right now, and it's going to be different than if a person took a year of their life and wrote on the same topic. It's going to have a different quality to it. And I know which one I'll always gravitate towards.
Yeah. In terms of us entering this age of abundance for all, how confident are you that humanity makes it to that age?
I think just the fact that we're here and we're on this journey individually, collectively, means that it's our future. I'd like to be that optimistic and to say that that it's our I don't want to say our destiny. It's the goal. It's what we're working towards. I do think that there are some bumpy roads ahead. I think it's happening right now.
Yep, for sure.
And I think those will continue to be great teachers. I think that those will continue to catalyze more awakening. And as long as we can maintain that perspective and continue to move forward, taking care of ourselves, taking care of each other, keeping our eyes on the prize, which is, uplifting everyone, then I think it's inevitable.
Given this consciousness awakening underway, I would actually even posit that we're at the earlier part of the curve of an exponential there, too, and that technology is going to take us into that nature of what makes us most human. This chase for sentience. We were talking about this last night over dinner, this chase to make an AGI, try to make AI as sentient as we are. I think it's going to take us to the nature of really understanding how consciousness works. And the reality is nobody knows how it works right now. We can all just grasp at it. You and I both believe, we're all one, and that we all are in this reality as a part of the divine, as a part of source, getting all types of divine nudges. I think our awareness of that is going to accelerate too as we go down this path. As Mark Goper would say, I know you're a big Mark Goper fan. That was a beautiful moment last night, seeing him give you his books. You had already read them, but giving you the signed copies. We only know what 4% of the universe is even made of, and that's the observable universe, not to mention if we live in a multidimensional reality or there's parallel universes. And that 4% we call matter. We have no idea today what dark energy and dark matter is. Zero clue.
Everything that we can observe in our intellect, I mean, it's limited by what we can observe. So it's limited to that 4%. And, this conversation about intuition, it's another way of knowing that's beyond that, and I think so that's really just coming back to acknowledging with humility that we can only know so much by experiencing the outer world through these five senses, and that there's another way of knowing that's connected directly to source. And as you're saying, you feel like technology is going to help us as we move forward more and more. I think perhaps that's true. It's going to free us up to have these experiences, to turn inward. And I think it's all about having that experience yourself, where it becomes an experienced truth as opposed to an intellectual idea.
Well, I love your heart, brother, and I really, really appreciate our friendship a lot. And I cannot wait until intuition is out there in the field. People are seeing it, at movie theaters and on, whatever streaming service picks it up. I mean, there's so many of them now. And Deborah and I are glad to be a part of it. We're really excited to be investing in you and just really, I'm very, very honored and grateful that you and I were brought together in the Grand Canyon by Arjun. And I'm going to start sounding like an advertisement on this. I say that there's no ads on the podcast, and it's true. But Grand Canyon Expedition Company, we should give a shout out to that team. That team, gcex.com. People should take that trip. That was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful trip together.
Unbelievable. I mean, just one last quick story about intuition is I wasn't sure I was going to go on that trip. Arjun invited me. I didn't really know him. He was at Mountain Film in Telluride.
Which I'm going to go to. Yeah.
Yes.
Can't wait. You're on the board.
Yeah, my favorite festival in the world. And I was leading a little hike meditation, and Arjun afterwards, sometime after, invited me on the trip. And I was like, my knee-jerk reaction was, I'm so busy. I have so much I should be doing. I need to be working on this film. I can't stop for 8 days and unplug. And I'm busy being busy and getting stuff done. And then I was like, all right, I keep on telling myself, if I'm making a film about intuition, I have to practice it. Mm-hmm. And I remember where I was. I sat down. I was visiting my parents. I sat down at the dining room table, and I got really quiet. And all of a sudden I got choked up, and my whole body, it was just such a yes. I was like, I have to go on this trip. Mm-hmm. Where my intellect was like, I don't know these people. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be trapped at the bottom of a canyon with all these strangers.
No electricity.
Are they my tribe? I don't know who
Where's
they
the bathroom?
Are. Exactly. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was such a resounding yes that I was like, I just let go of all those other little stories in my head about why I shouldn't go.
Yeah.
I was just like, yep, I'm going. And immediately it became clear, and the fact that I'm sitting here today, and it keeps on.
I feel the same way.
Revealing itself. And there was someone else from the trip who has come on to support the Intuition Project. Yeah. Which I do want to share is, yes, it's going to be a film, potentially a series, and we're also doing a podcast simultaneously.
So cool.
Yeah, so that is all in the works, and the podcast will probably come out before the film because we can do that a little bit faster. Yeah. So we'll do everything we can to keep you posted and
awesome.
Keep everyone in the loop.
Awesome. All right,
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, again, for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. Please keep on showing your love, share the podcast. There are no ads. I'm self-funding this. This is my love letter to humanity. And people need to hear about us needing to have this heart shift. And there have been so many amazing guests already on here that really can help teach you how to do that. And so many books mentioned. And there's so much more to come. I am so excited about the lineup. And I can't wait to share those future episodes with you. Thanks again.